I'm interested in exponential thinking. But let me start by talking a little bit about Ernest Becker. Ernest Becker wrote the 1974 Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Denial of Death. And that book changed my life. That book basically distilled the human condition, and it said that the human condition is defined by our death anxiety. We are the only species that is aware of its mortality. To have emerged from nothing, to have a name, consciousness of self, deep inner feeling, an excruciating inner yearning for life and self-expression, and yet with all this, yet to die. We have the mental capacity to ponder the infinite, yet we're housed in these heart-pumping, breath-gasping, decaying bodies. We are godly, yet creaturely. And that book really affected me because basically it says, in spite of all of our efforts, we're these mortal beings, and what do we do? So Ernest Becker says the only way we can cure the affliction of this death anxiety is through three solutions to the problem of death. The first solution to the problem of death he calls the religious solution. We're all familiar with this one. It provides a narrative that promises us an afterlife, which makes the mortal coil more bearable. But in secular societies, the religious solution to the problem of death no longer really satiates that itch. The second solution to the problem of death is the romantic solution. The romantic solution is when we deify our lovers. She's like the wind, she's my salvation, she is the sun. We turn our lovers into gods and goddesses who can save us from our mortal coil. But ultimately, no relationship can bear the burden of godhood. Eventually, our gods reveal their clay feet. So the third solution to the problem of death, ultimately, I think is the most interesting one. And that's the creative solution to the problem of death. And that's the one where we are defined by the great works of art, by our contribution to humanity that will somehow outlive us when we die. The symbolic immortality that is granted to us by the creative solution to the death problem. But I actually take this a step further now, because I think that through technology, we are literalizing the promise of the creative solution to the problem of death. Because technology is what actually extends our sphere of possibility. We didn't stay in the caves, we haven't stayed in the planet, and soon we won't stay with the limitations of our biology. The cognitive philosopher Andy Clark defines technology as an exoskeleton, extending our thought, our reach, and our vision. Terence McKenna said technology is the real skin of our species. As Ray Kurzweil says, the very first time that an early hominid picked up a stick to reach a fruit on a really high tree, we've been using our tools to extend who and what we are. Andy Clark says we need to get over our skin back bias, and instead of seeing ourselves as separate from our tools, he says our tools are who and what we are. Our skyscrapers, our jet engines, they are outgrowths of the human imagination. They are us. Right now, we are exploring the Martian landscape. Our frontal lobes, the summary of 1,000 minds working together is in that planet exploring it right now. And this is unbelievable. This is amazing. And the most amazing part of technology is that it's evolving at an exponential rate. We've talked a lot about this at this conference, the singularity, this event horizon just beyond our reach, where it's going to transform the human experience. And exponential thinking is key, because we tend to see the world in a linear and local way, but as Peter Diamandis says, the world is global and exponential. The best explanation to really elucidate exponential growth is the 30 steps example that Ray Kurzweil talks about. If you take 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you get to 30. That's the way we project things, right? But if you take those same 30 steps exponentially, you go 2, 4, 8, 16. Those same 30 steps later, at an exponential rate, you get to 1 billion. That's the reason that the cell phone in your pocket today is 1,000,000 times cheaper, 1,000,000 times smaller, and 1,000 times more powerful than a $60 million supercomputer that was half a building in size in Stanford 40 years ago. So what used to be half a building now fits in your pocket. In the next 25 years, it'll fit inside your blood cells. The supercomputers of yesteryear are in everybody's hands. That's why Singularity University says leverage these emerging technologies to see if you can impact the lives of 1 billion people in a positive way. So a number of months ago, I decided that these ideas are so big that they don't fit inside of their usual academic packaging. Shots of philosophical espresso to reinvigorate audiences and pull people so radically out of context and force them to gawk in amazement at the ubiquitous everyday wonders we're culturally disposed to ignore. As Coleridge says, the challenge is to awaken the mind's attention from the lethargy of custom and the film of familiarity and redirecting it instead to the wonders of existence. As we know this, that ideas transform the planet. That's why I call them shots of philosophical espresso, because they're really like invigorating. And really, it's my attempt to capture and manage attention, because only when our attention is fully occupied, only when we are immersed in something, can any kind of transpersonal growth, persuasion, or education take place. So the capture and management of attention is key. Hold inspiration in stasis. The ecstatic euphoria that we get when we have a profound realization or insight is usually fleeting. Insight and inspiration tend to be defined by their impermanence. And I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with the idea that the greatest moments of our lives have to be so fleeting. Communicate the lonely experience of inspiration, which usually happens in our head. And the goal of every artist is to communicate that vision in song, in poetry, in paint, or in these shots of philosophical espresso. And we need to really think of this. We need to think of technology as an extension of our nervous system. The first information technology was the alphabet. The alphabet allowed us to extend information through time and space outside of DNA. We went from genes to memes with the invention of culture. And now memes, ideas, transform the world. And this, for me, this induces a state of awe, a state of wonder. I'm caught up in the marvel of it all. And it turns out that human beings have this unique capacity to contemplate themselves, to marvel at existence and progress in science and technology. And it turns out that being in awe is actually biologically advantageous. It has profound psychological benefits to blow our own minds. Timothy Leary was right. In order to use your heads, you've got to go out of your mind.